I still remember the exact sound his shoes made the first morning he walked into the office. Sharp, impatient clicks that cut through the usual hum of keyboards and phone calls. His name was Ethan Cole, the only son of our founder, and apparently the company's future. I'd been with the firm for 15 years, long before he'd even finished college. I helped build our logistics department from a team of 3 into an operation that kept half the city's hospitals supplied. But to Ethan, I was just another relic from his father's outdated era. "The moment I take over, you're out," he told me one afternoon, not even lowering his voice. It was his 3rd week as assistant director, a title his father created just to give him a place to start. He leaned against my office door, wearing that arrogant smirk that came so naturally to him. "You don't take orders well, Carol. That's a problem in a company that's about to evolve." I looked up from the budget report I'd been finalizing. Following orders isn't the same as following bad decisions. His jaw tightened. "Careful," he said quietly. "That attitude won't age well when I'm in charge." Then he left, his cologne lingering like a warning. I told myself to ignore him, to stay professional. After all, his father, Mr. Cole, still ran the company, and he valued loyalty. He'd always treated me with respect, trusted me. But deep down, I knew the balance was shifting. Ethan wasn't just arrogant, he was reckless. And reckless people with power are dangerous. Over the next few months, his behavior only worsened. He missed meetings, barked orders through interns, and used company credit cards like they were his personal wallet. No one dared to report him. His father was aging, and everyone knew Ethan was being groomed to take over. Then, the nights began. It started subtly. I'd stay late to finish reports or coordinate early shipments. Around 3 a.m., when the building was nearly silent, I'd hear faint footsteps echoing through the concrete floors below. At first, I thought it was the night security guard. But one night, I saw him, Ethan, walking quickly through the hallway, hoodie up, heading toward the basement. The basement was restricted. Only logistics personnel and maintenance staff had clearance. Even I didn't go there often. It mostly stored outdated equipment and paper records. But Ethan didn't look like a man checking old files. He looked secretive. The next morning, he arrived at 10 a.m., acting like nothing had happened. Sunglasses on indoors, yawning through the leadership briefing. I couldn't stop wondering what he was doing down there. Then it became a pattern. Every night, same time. Between 2:50 and 3:10 a.m., the security cameras near the elevator would flicker off for a few seconds. I only noticed because I sometimes reviewed footage during safety audits. At first, I thought I was overreacting. Maybe he was meeting someone. Maybe it was personal. But when I asked the night guard about it, his reaction told me otherwise. He shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting toward the cameras. "I don't know, Ms. Reed," he said. "He told us not to talk about it. Said it's company confidential." Company confidential? At 3 in the morning? That phrase stayed in my head for days. I started noticing small inconsistencies. Inventory reports that didn't match. Supply crates that disappeared from the basement records. Strange invoice payments signed off under Ethan's credentials. It didn't add up. I began collecting copies, quietly. Screenshots, timestamps, discrepancies. Nothing big enough to accuse him yet, but enough to make me lose sleep. Then, one Thursday, everything changed. That evening, Mr. Cole called me into his office. His usual warmth was gone. He looked exhausted, pale even. "Carol," he said, his voice heavy. "I'll be out for a few weeks. Health reasons. Ethan will oversee operations in my absence." My stomach dropped. He must have seen the worry in my eyes because he added softly, "I trust you'll keep things steady." The moment Mr. Cole left the building that night, Ethan was in my office. "You heard the man," he said, grinning. "I'm in charge now." "You answered to me," I stayed quiet. He leaned closer, his breath sharp with whiskey. "And just to be clear, you're lucky I'm letting you stay. I know about your little audits. Next time you try to look into my work, you'll regret it. He left before I could respond, but something inside me snapped that night. I wasn't going to let him destroy the company Mr. Cole built, or drag me down with him. So, I decided to find out what he was really doing. The next few nights, I watched from my office window. Every night. Same time. 3 a.m. sharp, Ethan would appear in the hallway below, swipe his card, and disappear into the basement. Finally, I made up my mind. That Sunday, I stayed late under the pretense of finishing end-of-quarter summaries. Around 2:45, I turned off the lights and waited in the dark. At exactly 2:59, the elevator dinged. I followed him quietly, keeping my distance as he descended the staircase to the lower level. The corridor was dim, filled with the hum of old generators. Then I saw him, standing in front of a sealed storage room, punching in a code. When the door opened, I froze. Rows of unopened medical crates, labels scratched off. Inside, boxes of controlled substances meant for hospital distribution. Ethan was selling company supplies on the black market. I stepped back, my breath caught in my throat. A sharp sound escaped me. Too loud. He turned, flashlight beam cutting through the dark, eyes wide. "Carol?" I ran. By the time I reached the lobby, my hands were shaking as I dialed 911. 30 minutes later, the police were at the door. And for the first time in months, I wasn't afraid anymore. The police arrived faster than I expected. Maybe because I sounded desperate on the call, or maybe because I mentioned controlled substances and falsified inventory. Either way, by the time the first patrol car pulled into the parking lot, the adrenaline had already started wearing off. My hands were trembling, my mouth dry, and I realized I was still in my office clothes. Wrinkled, coffee-stained, and suddenly far too thin for the cold air rushing through the lobby doors. 2 uniformed officers entered, followed by a detective in plain clothes. I showed my company ID and tried to keep my voice steady. "He's in the basement," I said. "Ethan Cole. He's the son of the owner. You'll need access cards for the lower level." The detective, his badge read Miller, nodded. "Stay here, ma'am." "We'll handle it." I stood there frozen as they disappeared down the hallway. The building felt impossibly quiet, the kind of silence that sits heavy in your chest. For a moment, I considered running, just walking out into the night and pretending none of this existed. But then I remembered the crates, the labels, the stolen drugs meant for patients who might never get them. And I stayed. It couldn't have been more than 10 minutes before I heard the shouts echoing from below. The sound of footsteps, a crash. And then, silence again. One of the officers came up moments later, his expression unreadable. "We've detained him," he said. "You'll need to come down and identify what you saw." My legs felt like glass as I followed him back into the elevator. The air inside the basement was thick. Dust, chemicals, fear. Ethan stood against the wall, hands cuffed behind his back, face pale but defiant. He didn't speak, didn't even look at me. The detective shone his flashlight over the crates. "These were scheduled for hospital distribution?" "Yes," I said quietly. "Every one of them is tracked through the company's system." But I noticed inventory discrepancies for weeks, Miller nodded. "And he had access?" "Full access," I replied. "But only his father and I are authorized to override distribution schedules." "He must have used his father's credentials," Ethan finally spoke. "You don't know what you're talking about." His voice was calm, too calm. "My father approved this transfer." I met his eyes. "Then why were you sneaking in here at 3 in the morning?" He smirked faintly. "Because I knew you'd be watching." The detective interrupted before I could answer. "That's enough. Mr. Cole, you'll come with us." He read Ethan his rights, but Ethan barely reacted. Only when they started leading him up the stairs did he glance over his shoulder. "You've just made the biggest mistake of your career, Carol." Those words lingered even after he was gone. By the time the police left, it was nearly dawn. I sat in my car for over an hour, Engine off, staring at the sunrise creeping over the parking lot. My mind was spinning, relief tangled with dread. I had exposed something criminal, yes, but I'd also just brought down the owner's son. What would Mr. Cole say? That question was answered later that morning when my phone rang. His assistant's trembling voice came through the line. Mr. Cole wants to see you immediately. When I arrived at his home, he looked 20 years older than he had a week ago. The oxygen machine beside his chair hummed softly. "Sit down, Carol," he said. His tone wasn't angry, just tired. "I've already spoken to the police," he continued. "They told me everything. The evidence, the warehouse footage, your statement." He rubbed his forehead. "I can't believe it." My own son, I stayed silent. What could I possibly say? After a long pause, he looked up. "You did the right thing. You protected this company when I couldn't." His voice broke slightly. "I'll make sure you're not punished for it." "Sir," I said quietly, "I didn't do it for protection. I did it because people could have died if those shipments went missing." He nodded slowly. "I know." For the next few days, everything was chaos. Police investigations, corporate auditors, reporters camping outside the gates. The story leaked almost immediately. Founder's son arrested in pharmaceutical theft investigation. I stayed away from the cameras, burying myself in work. But the whispers followed me everywhere. Some saw me as a hero. Others called me a traitor. The logistics team avoided eye contact. The board members sent polite but distant emails. The air in the office was thin, cold, waiting for someone to decide which version of me was true. Then came the hearing. Ethan was released on bail pending formal charges. When I saw him in the hallway 2 weeks later, suit pressed, lawyer beside him, it was like nothing had happened. He even smiled at me. "Back at work?" I asked, trying to hide the disbelief in my voice. He shrugged. "Public relations nightmare. My father's trying to keep it internal. Don't worry, I won't be staying long." His eyes flicked toward the security cameras above. "But you? You should be careful, Carol. Not everyone likes a whistleblower." It was a threat, soft but unmistakable. That night, when I got home, I found a note slipped under my door. No envelope, no signature. Just one line written in block letters. "You shouldn't have gone downstairs." I stared at it for a long time, my pulse pounding. Maybe Ethan was out on bail, but he wasn't done. And as I would soon learn, neither was I. The note stayed on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I finally slid it into a folder with my other documents. Copies of the inventory records, the police report, everything tied to Ethan's arrest. I told myself it was probably nothing. A scare tactic. Still, every sound in my apartment started feeling louder. The hum of the refrigerator, the creak of floorboards, even the elevator down the hall. I had lived alone for 8 years, but for the first time, it didn't feel like solitude. It felt like being watched. At work, the atmosphere had shifted. Ethan's arrest had shaken the company, but no one wanted to talk about it. The board was silent. HR issued a vague memo about internal investigations and maintaining confidentiality. But behind closed doors, people whispered. A few coworkers treated me kindly, offering awkward smiles or quick reassurances. Others avoided me entirely, like I was radioactive. On the 4th day, I received a call from Detective Miller. "Ms. Reed, just checking in," he said. "Has anyone contacted you since the arrest?" I hesitated. There was a note. Slipped under my door. No name. He sighed quietly. "Do you still have it?" "Yes." "Keep it. Don't touch it with bare hands again. We'll send someone to pick it up." His voice was calm, but I could tell there was something he wasn't saying. "Detective?" I asked. "What's really happening? Is Ethan free to go anywhere?" "He's out on bail," he confirmed. "But he's being monitored. You shouldn't have contact with him. If anything happens, even something small, Call me that night. I took the long way home, looping through different streets. When I finally parked, I sat in my car for 10 minutes before getting out, scanning the lot. The paranoia felt suffocating, but somewhere beneath it was a sharper instinct, a sense that I wasn't just being intimidated. Someone was cleaning up. 2 days later, my suspicion became fact. I arrived at the office early, planning to check archived invoices connected to Ethan's transactions. When I entered the storage room, the boxes were gone. Every single physical file I had flagged was missing. The clerk on duty swore he hadn't seen anyone come in. I went straight to Mr. Cole's office, but his assistant stopped me. "He's not in, Carol," she said, eyes down. "He's at a medical appointment." "When will he be back?" "I don't know. He hasn't been feeling well." Something about her tone sent a chill down my spine. At noon, I returned to my desk and found an envelope waiting. No return address, no markings. Inside was a printed photo. Me, taken from across the parking lot. My car in the background. My face mid-step, unaware. On the back, one line was written in black ink. "Stop digging." I locked myself in the supply closet and called Detective Miller again. My voice was shaking. "Detective, I just got a photo of myself." "Someone's following me." "Where are you right now?" "At work." "Stay there. Don't leave alone. I'll send a patrol car to check the premises." They arrived within 20 minutes, asked questions, took the photo, and left. But the damage was done. I felt like a ghost walking through the halls after that. Present, but disconnected. That evening, Mr. Cole finally called me. His voice was weak, like he'd been crying. "Carol, I'm stepping back for good," he said. "The board wants a transition plan. They're bringing in interim leadership." "Who?" I asked. There was a pause before he answered. "Ethan's lawyer recommended someone from outside. But the board they might bring Ethan back if the charges drop." I couldn't breathe for a moment. "Bring him back? After what he did?" "The official statement says there's no conclusive evidence yet," he said quietly. "They're calling it a misunderstanding of procedures." I almost laughed. A misunderstanding. He'd been caught with stolen supplies in a locked basement at 3 a.m, and they were calling it a misunderstanding. When I hung up, anger replaced fear. I couldn't let this happen. Not again. I spent the next 2 nights gathering everything I had. Digital copies, invoices, shipment schedules, even old security footage I'd downloaded months ago. If the company wanted to bury the truth, I was going to make sure it stayed alive somewhere else. On the 3rd night, while copying files onto an external drive, the lights in my apartment flickered. I froze. Then I heard it. A soft metallic click, like a door being nudged open. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear my own breath. I grabbed my phone and whispered, "Hello?" Nothing. Then a faint creak near the kitchen. I moved slowly, phone flashlight shaking in my hand. The air smelled like cigarette smoke. Fresh. But my windows were locked and I didn't smoke. When I reached the kitchen, the back door latch was half turned. Someone had tried to open it. My phone buzzed in my hand. An unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Ethan's voice came through, calm, almost smug. "You really don't know when to stop, do you?" My throat went dry. "Stay away from me." He chuckled softly. "You're not as untouchable as you think, Carol. You've made powerful people nervous. They'll clean this up one way or another." The call ended before I could reply. I stood there in the dark for a long time, shaking. Then I looked down at the drive in my hand. Still blinking, still recording. If they wanted to silence me, they'd have to get through the truth first. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I called in sick, though sick didn't even begin to describe it. I hadn't slept at all. Every sound in my apartment felt amplified. Footsteps above me, the faint buzz of my phone, the hum of the fridge. I kept replaying Ethan's words in my mind. "They'll clean this up. one way or another. By mid-afternoon, Detective Miller called. "We traced the number that contacted you," he said. "It's registered to a prepaid phone purchased last week." "No leads, but it's likely him. Can you protect me?" I asked. There was a short pause. "Not formally." "Not yet. There's no direct threat, just intimidation. But we're watching him. I didn't find much comfort in that. I had already realized something. Intimidation wasn't his end goal. It was a warning. He wanted me to panic, to make a mistake. That night, I packed an overnight bag and drove to a small motel on the edge of town. It wasn't far, but far enough to make me feel invisible. I backed my car against the wall so the license plate couldn't be seen from the street, locked the door, and sat on the bed staring at the small, blinking drive in my purse. It contained everything: scanned documents, shipment records, copies of invoices, timestamps from security footage, evidence the board had conveniently ignored. I decided to send it all to Miller in the morning. But when I turned on my laptop, something strange happened. My files were gone. Every folder, every photo, every note. Just blank space. My stomach dropped. I checked the drive on my backup computer. Empty. I wasn't hacked remotely. It was local. Someone had accessed it physically. That's when it hit me. Someone had been in my apartment while I was gone. Not just trying the back door. Inside. I threw on my coat and drove straight to the station. Miller met me in the lobby, his face grave. "Slow down, Carol," he said. "Start from the beginning." "They were in my apartment," I said, my voice shaking. "My files, they're gone." He frowned. "We can check the scene, but if you left voluntarily, there's no sign of forced entry." "They had a key," I snapped. "Or copied one. Ethan's people have access to everything Miller's side. Listen, we're pushing this through the DA's office. There's enough for a criminal case if we can link the missing inventory directly to him. But you can't stay alone. You need to disappear for a few days." Disappear. The word settled like a stone in my chest. I drove to the only person I could trust. Nicole, a former colleague who'd transferred to another branch 2 years ago. She opened the door still in her scrubs, confusion turning to worry when she saw my face. "Carol, what's going on?" I told her everything. The basement, the arrest, the threats, the erased files. She listened in silence, her expression hardening. "You need to trap him," she said finally. "If they're deleting evidence, then make new evidence. Make him expose himself." Her words lingered. Trap him. That night, we made a plan. I still had access to my company email and a few internal systems. If Ethan was truly panicking, I could use that. I'd send a fake message, one that sounded like I had more evidence, something he couldn't ignore. We wrote it together. 2. Ethan Cole. Subject: remaining files secured. "Ethan, I know what you've been doing, and I've made copies, not just of the inventory logs, but of your offshore transactions too. Meet me at the office basement at 3 a.m. tonight. If you want to explain yourself before this goes to the police, that's your last chance." We used a private server, no traceable IP, and scheduled it to send automatically in an hour. I parked my car 2 blocks away from the company, hidden behind a delivery truck, and waited. At 2:47, a black SUV pulled into the lot. The driver's side door opened. Ethan. I stayed low, heart pounding. He walked straight to the basement entrance, scanning his badge. The red light blinked. Access denied. He slammed his hand against the reader, muttering something, then pulled out his phone. That's when 2 unmarked cars rolled in behind him, lights flashing silently. Detective Miller stepped out first. "Mr. Cole," he said loudly. "Step away from the door." Ethan froze, phone still in hand. For the first time, I saw panic on his face. Miller gestured toward the second officer. "We have a warrant to search your vehicle and confiscate your devices." Ethan's bravado cracked. "You set me up," he hissed, looking around. "Where is she?" I stayed out of sight, watching as they cuffed him. One of the officers retrieved his phone, scrolled, and handed it to Miller. "You'll want to see this, sir." Miller glanced at the screen. Whatever he saw made his jaw tighten. He turned to Ethan. "You've been sending threats." "We have the voice recordings." Ethan didn't reply. He just laughed bitterly. "You think you've won? You have no idea who my family is." As they led him to the car, I finally stepped out from behind the truck. Miller looked up, surprised. "You were here?" "I needed to know," I said quietly. "I needed to see it end." He nodded slowly. "It's not over yet. But this will help. He'll have to answer for everything now." For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to relief. But underneath it was something else. The uneasy feeling that Ethan's words weren't just arrogance. Because people like him didn't go down quietly. And I knew this wasn't truly over. Not yet. Ethan's arrest made the local news within 24 hours. Business heir detained for obstruction and corporate theft. It wasn't front-page material. Not yet. But it was enough to send ripples through the city's business circles. By Monday morning, my inbox was overflowing with urgent messages from board members who hadn't spoken to me in months. Some offered condolences, others demanded updates, but all of them danced around the same fear. How much did I know? And what was I going to do next? Detective Miller called me that afternoon. "They've officially charged him," he said. "Obstruction, evidence tampering, and misuse of medical supplies. It's going to court. You might be called to testify." My stomach tightened. "Is it over?" I asked. "Not yet," he said. But this time, he doesn't have room to hide. I wanted to believe him. But part of me stayed uneasy. Because I knew the people behind Ethan were far more dangerous than Ethan himself. The powerful people he'd hinted at during our last call weren't just words. The stolen supplies, the false invoices, the offshore transfers, they weren't the work of one arrogant son. He was a pawn, and I'd just exposed the game. That week, Mr. Cole requested a meeting. His assistant sounded nervous on the phone, but I agreed. When I arrived at his home, the atmosphere was heavy, the house darker than usual. He was sitting by the window, oxygen tube in his nose, hands trembling slightly. "Carol," he began softly, "I don't know how to apologize." "You don't have to," I said. "You trusted your son." "That's not a crime." He shook his head. "It's worse than that. I trusted the wrong people around him. The board. They pushed me to let Ethan handle the logistics contracts. I thought it was experience. Turns out they had deals lined up behind my back. Your discovery ruined everything for them." He looked at me then, eyes glistening. "They'll come after you, Carol. Maybe not directly, but they'll try to bury you. You embarrassed them?" I nodded slowly. "Then I'll be ready." He smiled faintly. "That's what I always admired about you." 2 days later, he passed away in his sleep. The company sent a formal email, brief, emotionless, and devoid of acknowledgement for the man who had built everything from nothing. I sat in my office that morning, rereading the message until my hands shook. The only line that felt human was the last one. "The board will announce interim leadership shortly." By the following week, they did. A polished announcement about continuing the founder's legacy under new management. And at the bottom of that memo, one name made my heart stop. Ethan Cole, reinstated pending legal review, serving as external advisor. It felt like a slap. I called Miller immediately. "How is he out again?" "Bail hearing," he said grimly. The lawyers argued that his health and family circumstances warranted temporary release. "He's restricted from company property, at least on paper, I repeated bitterly. That night, I stayed late again. The office was empty. The air stale with the smell of dust and printer ink. I wanted to clear my desk, to be done with this place. But something kept me there. Maybe closure. Maybe curiosity. Around 9:30, I heard the elevator ding. The sound echoed through the floor. I froze. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. When I turned toward the glass doors, he was standing there. Ethan. He looked thinner, paler, but his eyes were the same. Sharp, calculating. "You shouldn't be here," I said, voice low. "Neither should you," he replied calmly. "But here we are." He took a step closer, and I noticed the bandage on his wrist. "You think you won, don't you?" he continued. "You think the truth matters. It doesn't. These people, they'll make me the victim. The story's already changing," I swallowed hard. "You ruined lives for profit. That's not something you spin your way out of." He laughed softly. "Watch me." Then he leaned closer, lowering his voice. "My father's gone. The board wants peace. They'll make a deal. And when they do, I'll walk free. You? You'll be the woman who cost this company millions. They'll erase you, Carol." Piece by piece, I stared at him, pulse racing. "Then I'll make sure they can't." He frowned slightly, and I reached into my bag. The small recorder blinked red. "I learned from the best," I said quietly. "Every threat you've made since you got out, every word, it's all here." For the first time, I saw real fear flash in his eyes. He turned sharply, heading toward the elevator, but the doors slid open before he could reach them. Detective Miller stepped out, followed by 2 officers. "Ethan Cole," he said, voice steady. "You're under arrest for violating your bail conditions." Ethan froze, jaw tight. "You set me up again." "No," I said softly. "You set yourself up." I just pressed record. They cuffed him without resistance this time. As they led him away, he glanced back once, his face unreadable, somewhere between hatred and disbelief. When the doors closed behind them, I exhaled for the first time in what felt like months. The next day, the company issued another statement. Effective immediately, Ethan Cole is permanently removed from all positions within the organization. The board members resigned in quiet succession. An external investigation was announced. For the first time, the halls felt lighter. 2 weeks later, I packed my things, not in defeat, but in peace. As I walked out of the office, I passed the plaque near the lobby. Founded by Richard Cole, built on integrity, trust, and service. For the first time, I understood those words fully. It wasn't revenge that drove me all this time. It was restoration. The need to remind people that decency still mattered, even when power didn't. I drove home that evening with the windows down, the city lights flickering in the distance. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. I had lost my job, maybe my reputation too. But I had kept something far more valuable: myself.